Breaking news today. After years of advocating for fair elections, California's governor is now considering redrawing congressional maps, employing the very tactics he previously criticized. Is this move a principled stand or merely another attempt at consolidating power?
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
NBC reports that Gavin Newsom, in an epic troll, is now speaking Trump's language amidst the intensifying redistricting battle. Consider this. The governor of California, who has long criticized Donald Trump, is now adopting his tactics, including all-caps tweets and playground nicknames. Why? It appears that when Democrats feel their control waning, the principles they once held dear, like fairness and democracy, suddenly become flexible. Gerrymandering, previously denounced as a dire threat, is now seen as a useful strategy. So we must ask, is this about protecting democracy or merely about self-preservation? This situation illustrates that the establishment often plays by its own set of rules. Those in power are not defending principles. They are safeguarding their positions, ready to dismantle the system rather than give up control. Let the show begin.
It started in the state of Texas, where today Texas Governor Greg Abbott is once again threatening the Democratic lawmakers who fled that state in order to deny Republicans a quorum as they endeavor to rip up Texas's congressional districts mid-decade. Abbott says once the legislature's special session ends Friday, he plans to immediately begin a new one until he can push through his new, even more Republican-friendly map, a special request from Donald Trump. One of those Democrats outside of Texas state lines right now is Representative James Tallarico. Fox News invited him on their air yesterday to talk gerrymandering, and this is how it went.
You gave the ballgame analogy.
Democratic lawmakers fleeing Texas to block a vote on congressional maps is a familiar tactic in the state's political playbook. This latest walkout is a prime example of political theater designed to stall the inevitable. Historically used by both parties, such tactics are largely symbolic and do little more than delay the legislative process and shirk the responsibilities owed to their constituents. Governor Abbott's vow to call continuous special sessions until the work is completed underscores that the legislative process should not be disrupted by a minority unwilling to accept election results or adhere to chamber rules. The Democrats argue they are defending democracy, yet their actions, leaving the state to avoid participation, suggest otherwise. This is the same party that often decries threats to democratic norms, yet now they exploit procedural loopholes for partisan gain. It's highly hypocritical for these lawmakers to claim the moral high ground while abandoning their duties and leaving Texas voters unrepresented. The controversy surrounding the proposed redistricting map is not a new power grab. Redistricting occurs every decade, and both parties have historically used this process to further their interests. The key difference is that Republicans are transparent about their intentions, whereas Democrats in states like California and New York are taking similar aggressive steps under the guise of fairness. This tit-for-tat approach undermines public trust and trivializes the notion that either party is committed to genuine reform. Employing law enforcement and threatening legal action against those who break quorum is not about suppressing dissent. It's about enforcing the rule of law and ensuring that elected officials fulfill their obligations. If lawmakers can simply leave whenever they are outnumbered, the legislative process would descend into chaos. Texans deserve representatives who will stand and advocate for their ideas on the floor, not politicians who flee to other states and boast about their refusal to engage. What we are witnessing is not a principled stand for democracy, but a strategic maneuver by Democratic elites to manipulate the system to their advantage, all while accusing their opponents of the very misconduct they are engaging in. This exemplifies the kind of establishment hypocrisy that fuels public cynicism towards government. It is time for both parties to cease their gamesmanship and commit to the hard work of transparent legislating where voters can hold them accountable.
California will now draw new, more beautiful maps. They will be historic as they will end the Trump presidency. Dems take back the House. Big press conference this week with powerful Dems and Gavin Newsom, your favorite governor, that will be devastating for MAGA. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
California's efforts to redraw congressional maps are being presented as a historic initiative. This move is a clear example of partisan gerrymandering, this time by Democrats who have historically positioned themselves as advocates for fair elections and independent commissions. The talk of creating more beautiful maps and ending the Trump presidency merely adds to the ongoing political arms race, where both parties manipulate the system to secure their power. It's particularly striking when Democrats abandon their principles as soon as it benefits them. Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to bypass California's Independent Redistricting Commission, a body established by voters to prevent political manipulation, illustrates how quickly politicians discard norms for partisan gain. This isn't about protecting democracy, it's about consolidating power under the guise of fairness and reform. The proposed ballot measure would allow the Democrat-dominated legislature to draw maps for the next 3 election cycles, only returning control to the commission afterward. This isn't reform, it's sheer opportunism. The escalating redistricting battles between red and blue states are more than a sign of polarization. They're a direct threat to public trust in the electoral process. When each party justifies its gerrymandering as a necessary counter to the other, it leaves voters disillusioned, believing the system is entirely rigged. This results in more safe seats for incumbents, fewer competitive races, and diminished accountability for those in power. The trend is alarming. Both parties now openly exploit redistricting, but the hypocrisy is particularly stark among Democrats who once condemned gerrymandering as a democratic threat and now use it to secure their dominance and purportedly end the Trump presidency. This establishment double standard fosters cynicism and disconnects voters. Also, the voices of Californians who supported a fair, nonpartisan redistricting process are now overshadowed by a political elite more focused on revenge than genuine reform. If these new maps are implemented, expect increased polarization and fewer incentives for lawmakers to collaborate. While redistricting might benefit powerful Democrats and their allies in the short term, it ultimately undermines the foundations of representative government and fuels the kind of anti-establishment sentiment that neither party is prepared to confront.
They're energized, not just by the issues, but by their own voters who are all too eager to see them fight. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Managing editor of The Bulwark, MSNBC contributor Sam Stein's here. Also joining us, pollster and president of Brilliant Corners Research, MSNBC political analyst Cornell Belcher's here. And we start with Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California, ranking member of the Oversight Committee. Congressman, I like the translation feature, and I feel like, among other things, what Gavin Newsom has cracked the code on is that translation into Donald Trump's social media posting language. Quite an epic troll of him. But on the substance of this, where do you see this fight?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, people are energized, and if Texas is going to punch, California is going to punch back harder. And people are right now in a fighting mood.
MSNBC's coverage today captures the intense partisan energy but lacks critical examination of the substance behind the spectacle. The panel's focus on the fighting mood of Democratic voters and leaders like Gavin Newsom may energize their base, yet it overlooks the real issue. This isn't about defending democracy but seeking political advantage. Newsom's threat to redraw California's maps in response to Texas actions highlights a shift from principled resistance to the same type of gerrymandering Democrats have historically condemned, now framed as righteous retaliation. The coverage predominantly features Democratic voices and pollsters, reinforcing the narrative that these tactics are justified, without giving enough space to critics or independent experts who might question the wisdom or fairness of this escalation. There's a notable lack of rigorous fact-checking, such as the claim that California's move is a necessary countermeasure, which overlooks that it would temporarily return redistricting power to a single-party legislature, contradicting years of Democratic advocacy for independent commissions and fair maps. MSNBC uses visual storytelling effectively, with split screens showing enthusiastic Democratic lawmakers and supportive crowds, creating an impression of widespread grassroots support. This does little to inform viewers about the legal and constitutional implications of these maneuvers. The segment could benefit from more balanced reporting by including election law scholars or representatives from nonpartisan reform groups to discuss the dangerous precedents these actions could set for future elections. While the segment successfully captures the emotional pulse of Democratic voters, it falls short in holding party elites accountable for abandoning their previously stated principles. The coverage should challenge figures like Newsom on why, if independent redistricting was once the gold standard, it is now expendable when partisan interests are at stake. Instead, the show's reliance on partisan analysts and framing this as a justified fight overlooks the broader consequences. A race to the bottom that leaves voters in both parties increasingly cynical and disengaged. A more objective approach would examine how both parties use state power to entrench their influence rather than merely celebrating the fight. This is crucial at a time when faith in institutions is low, and politicians on both sides seem more focused on scoring points than restoring trust or transparency. The escalation of redistricting wars, fueled by elite maneuvering in states like California and Texas, signals not a healthy democracy, but a symptom of a political class that has lost sight of its obligations to the people. There's a pressing need for media coverage that moves beyond partisan cheerleading and asks tougher questions about the long-term impact of these tactics. Otherwise, the public is left with little more than political theater, while the real issues of accountability and fair representation remain unaddressed.
Essentially, the legislature right now is developing these maps. Obviously, with Congress and the governor's in the driver's seat. These maps will go in front of the legislature. The legislature will vote to put the maps in front of voters. That election is going to happen in November, likely. And so the whole process of actually getting on the ballot will happen in the next 2 weeks. Voters will then vote on the new map in November.
The economic implications of redistricting battles are often overlooked, yet they significantly impact families and businesses nationwide. When legislatures guided by Congress and governors push through new maps, the effects extend beyond mere political strategy. These changes can shift the balance of federal funding, regulatory priorities, and the overall economic climate for entire regions. As these maps progress toward a vote with the governor leading the charge, the stakes are tangible. The outcomes will determine which communities have a voice in Washington and which are sidelined. For households, this could mean changes in how federal funds are distributed for infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Redrawing districts to favor one party often results in less competitive elections, more entrenched incumbents, and reduced motivation for lawmakers to address local economic issues. This lack of competition tends to foster policies that prioritize party interests over the needs of small businesses, working families, and local economies. Each new boundary on an infographic represents potential shifts in grant funding, disaster relief, and industry influence over new regulations. From the financial sector's perspective, the uncertainty caused by ongoing redistricting disputes leads to market volatility. Investors and business leaders seek stability, and frequent changes in political boundaries make long-term planning challenging. This uncertainty can hinder job creation and deter investment in industries reliant on consistent public policies such as manufacturing, agriculture, and energy, key sectors in many contested districts. The intensification of redistricting as a partisan tool reflects a deeper issue. Both political parties are increasingly using state power to cement their influence. Democratic leaders in states like California and New York have abandoned their commitments to independent redistricting, claiming to promote fairness. This approach is not about reform, it's opportunism, signaling to voters and markets that rules are only followed when convenient. Such instability harms businesses and erodes the trust essential for a robust economy. Consumer confidence is also jeopardized. When voters witness politicians manipulating the system for partisan advantage, it fosters cynicism and disengagement. This cynicism doesn't just affect electoral turnout, it also influences consumer behavior, making families hesitant to make significant purchases or invest in their futures, perceiving the system as rigged. This sentiment stifles economic growth, affecting everyone regardless of political affiliation. In the weeks leading up to the November ballot, as the legislature advances these maps, it's crucial for voters to examine not only the political rhetoric, but also the real-world effects on their communities and finances. Although the process is swift, its repercussions will be long-lasting. The focus must remain on transparency, accountability, and genuine reform, rather than merely disguising partisan motives as democratic procedures. This leaves us with so many things to consider. Here we are again, Democrats preaching about democracy, only to redraw the map to maintain their power. Gavin Newsom claims it's about fairness, but it's just another power grab, a familiar tale from a party that has spent years lecturing us on the sacredness of elections. Recall the last administration? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris promised unity, yet we saw only division and secretive deals. Now, with President Trump prioritizing sanity in America, the establishment is scrambling to retain control. Why do they fear genuine competition? Perhaps because they know their ideas can't prevail unless the game is rigged. If you're wondering what hypocrisy looks like, just observe California. The people see it. The real question is, how much longer will we tolerate a system where rules only apply when they benefit the powerful? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. That's all for now.